looking at professional gender boundaries. And it's a hot topic at the moment. So obviously, knowing or the knowledge of Deen is all encompassing. It involves even the minutest detail. So how our relationships are with someone of the opposite sex is just as important, if not more, in today's day and age as it was in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So we've been given guidelines for how to live our life, according to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So likewise, many of you who are attending would be of having professional backgrounds, either from the business world, from the medical world, from engineering, from computer science, of various different backgrounds. So what we have in common is that we have to try and guide our work life. Sometimes can be quite precarious on a day-to-day, but having that Islamic understanding of what constitutes what we should or what we shouldn't do, or there may even be some gray areas which we weren't sure about. So this is where, inshallah, we'll have our esteemed speaker who will be attending soon. So before I introduce him, what I would say is that we will be, once he comes on, I'll hand it over to him. We'll have about maybe half an hour, 40 minutes of some important information that he'll impart to us, and then we'll have a short Q&A. And I think the Q&As are probably what we learn the most, because from a perspective of either the panelists or from the perspective of the listener are two different things, because we're imparting some sort of information, but we don't know if that information is relevant or is come across as in the right manner, or is there anything else that we need to know? So that's really important. So I'll be looking at the questions, and depending on Mufti Sahib, but I think most likely what we'll do is I'll take the questions and then we'll pass them on to Mufti Sahib at the end. But what I'd like to do is that as the conversation is going on, as the webinar is moving on, what would sometimes happen is there'll be a topic of conversation, and then you put something in the chat, and by the time we move on to another conversation, you giving me information on the chat which isn't relevant. So just put the context. This is the question regarding X, Y, and Z. Another important aspect is regarding what's the context that you want us to tell. So try and give as much information as you can in the questions, and inshallah you'll get just as good feedback from Mufti Sahib. So it's now 3:04. So let me just introduce our esteemed speaker, which is Mufti Muhammad ibn Adam al-Kawthari, and he is one of the eminent muftis in UK at the moment. He has, for those of you who are familiar to Balagh, he's quite a regular attender on many of the talks. I remember when so a little bit about myself also. I'm a hospital consultant. I work in the NHS in Manchester, and I work in acute medicine. So I've been in the professional world for close to 30 years. So don't look at this persona and think, how am I able to manage my professional responsibilities as well as my dini responsibilities? And this is what we'll try and figure out together. So yeah, Mufti Sahib, he's from Leicester. He's studied at several Darul Ulooms. He studied in Bury, which is a local Darul Uloom, not far from where I live here, in the north of England, in a place called Bury. And then also studied under many eminent scholars. So his main focus is iftar, which is the fatwas related to certain aspects of Deen, and he's written a few quite important books as well. He's authored works which include the Islamic Guide to Sexual Relations, elucidation of 40 hadith on marriage, birth control and abortion in Islam, the issue of shares and simplified rules of zakat. So he's covered many, many areas. So he's quite well known to many people who are from the UK. So I'm not sure. Is Mufti Saab here yet? No, there may be a slight delay. In any case, if someone can maybe in the chat just tell us what was the motivation to sorry, I'm not a sheikh. Someone's in the chat. I'm a doctor of a medical background. Inshallah, give me 5 years and I'll be a sheikh. But now I'm a humble, simple, worker in the NHS. So with a little bit of Islamic knowledge there. So, but yeah. So in looking at this subject, there are many. Yes, it will be recorded. So this has been recorded at the moment, and you should be able to get access to the recording later on. So that's a question from Shoaib Ismail. Yeah, when looking at this subject, I was doing quite a bit of reading around this, and there are many eminent books, but this is one particular book that I came across, and I managed to read it in a couple of hours, in about 3 hours. But it's quite an in-depth book written by another doctor, looking at gender relations. Now, before we start talking about gender, most people's understanding of gender is to do with a biological, male or female. But when we talk about gender, there's an overlay of social interactions on top of that. So when you talk about gender, we're not just talking about whether someone is biologically male or female. There is also a social construct which is added onto that. So it's a much kinder term than saying someone is male or female, or when we use the crude term sex. It's not that we're talking about that. The other construct is when we come to language, we talk about grammar, isn't it? So something is masculine or feminine. So any of those who are doing Arabic. So we're not talking about social interactions. We're actually talking about what happens when we are in the company of a person of the opposite sex. And in today's day and age, it's actually becoming, the waters are getting more and more muddied. So I work in the NHS, and I have one of my colleagues is actually a transgender male who identifies as female. So now, for me to have an interaction with that person, he identifies as female, but is actually male. So I can sit in seclusion and converse with this person, but this person identifies as female. So it becomes very, very nuanced, very, very tricky, doesn't it? And likewise, the opposite, someone who identifies as male, but is actually born or as a biological man, so as a biological female. So what do we do? So these are the issues that we have to sort of try and work around. And then looking at our professional backgrounds, I think a vast majority of you, particularly when it comes to medicine, when it comes to those in the medical field, because there are many issues around chaperones, about being in the company of a patient. So most of you will be aware about, the hadith that mentions to the nearest effect that if there's one, a male and a female alone, then shaitan is the third. So you have to have a chaperone with you in certain, in those interactions. And there are certain exceptions, obviously, like if you're dealing with a medical matter which is of urgency, and there's no other male available for a male patient, or vice versa for a female patient to have a female. We try our best. Obviously, we will do our best to do it, but inshallah, these are questions I'll pose to Mufti Sahib. So, alhamdulillah, without further ado, Mufti Sahib has arrived, and I'd like him to sort of start our webinar. So, Mufti Sahib, welcome to today's webinar, looking at these gender relationships and how we can work our way around those few issues that I'll probably bring up a few issues that I was talking about, but just over to you, Mufti Sahib. So we'll have a short discussion by yourself, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. Is that okay? So do you want me to keep an eye on the questions and then we can do that at the end, or do you want me to bring them up as you're talking?
We'll do the questions at the end, inshallah.
Okay, exactly. So over to you, Mufti Sahib, and welcome to the webinar.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وعلى كل من تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. سبحانك اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك. أما بعد, respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khair for Dr. who was just introducing today's session. And also Jazakumullah khair al-Balagh Academy for organizing this very important webinar. It's a general webinar, and the topic that we have, navigating professional gender boundaries. And we're going to look at the Islamic guidelines in relation to male-female interactions, specifically at the workplace, but generally, not just the workplace, but in a professional setting. Because we live in a time right now, and we've always lived in a time, but more so now. A lot of these challenges, I've always said this in many topics that we start discussing, a lot of these challenges, they've always been there, but they've just increased with every topic. I always, find myself starting a program or a discussion or a seminar or a course or a session by saying that this particular issue has always been there, but it's just gone to another level. That's what's happened with this issue of gender interaction. We've always had this issue of gender interaction. Quran deals with it. The hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam deals with in gender interaction. But we never had the kind of setup that we have today in terms of the workplace, in terms of professional setup, in terms of communication modes that we have before us, digital modes of communication, electronic modes of communication, internet, WhatsApp, social media. These are all new challenges to an old problem. Quran says about the old problem, لا تقربوا الزنا. Don't even get close to zina. Don't even get very, very close. Don't even get close to zina. This is why we all know this, that adultery, fornication, zina is absolutely prohibited, and anything that leads to it is also prohibited in Islam. And this is why we have this principle of saddu dhari'a, blocking the means to an evil before the evil actually materializes. So therefore, we have all these rules and guidelines that are there in the hadith, that are there in the Quranic verses. Allah says, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. Tell the believing men to lower their gazes. Allah says, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ. Tell the believing women to lower their gazes. وَيَحْفَظْنَ فُرُوجَهُنَّ وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُمْ. Protect and guard your modesty, your private parts. Guard your modesty and private parts, both to the men and women. Allah addresses. And there's hadiths that talk about these issues. So those issues have always been there. And when the wahi was being revealed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala discussed these issues. But the challenges were not as great. I mean, in the time of the Salaf, in the time of the righteous people, in the time of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, and the Tabi'un and the earlier times, life was very simple, There wasn't that many avenues or that many sort of areas or that many is another word I'm looking for. Not possibilities, but there were not as many, uh, ways of getting, not that many possibilities of a person uh, being tested with this issue of gender. Men would work, women would stay at home generally, and there wasn't like an interaction of men and women much. Uh, so, and people used to dress very, very modestly. People, it was a very simplistic lifestyle. So therefore, the challenge is great. So we really need to discuss. The first thing is we need to discuss this, and I've got one or two points on the slides, but I won't bring them up right now. Inshallah, when I discuss it, I'll just bring them up briefly. And like we said, inshallah, we'll take the questions right at the end, inshallah. Which means that if you want to write your questions whilst I'm talking, just write them down in the chat or whatever, or whatever you want to write them. Or you have the Q&A tab. You can write them, but inshallah, I will have a look at the end because it's very difficult to sort of continue with the flow of the conversation when you start looking at the question. So last 10 minutes, inshallah ta'ala. But I've got these 2-3 slides, which I will bring them up when we need to, inshallah. So this issue of human interaction, men-women interaction, male-female interaction, and navigating through the gender boundaries that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam have placed. It's a really important issue. Now, the first point here is that we have some basic guidelines that have been given. These guidelines have been given in the Quran and Sunnah, but they are applicable till the end of time. And there is a reason why these guidelines have been given. These guidelines have been given. These guidelines we can sort of identify them or describe them as guidelines given by Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, injunctions, guidance, guidelines, laws, rules, whatever you want to call them, ahkam. They have been given, we can describe them as guidelines of the Quran and Sunnah in relation to male-female interaction, relating to both the female and the male, or the male and the female. Guidelines given to both men and women. Guidelines given to both men and women. Not just women, to both men and women. For a respectful barrier, segregation between the two genders in order to save and protect social family life. This is how you could describe it. Once again, guidelines given by Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, laws and injunctions and guidelines given by the Quran and Sunnah for both men and women, in relation to a respectful segregation, respectful separation. These guidelines have been given for a respectful separation and segregation between the two genders, and the hikmah, the wisdom, is in order to save society and family life from social anarchy, and in order to protect family life. Because we know the main hikmah, the wisdom for all these rules, is that we as human beings, we are very lustful people. We have a lustful nature. When we say lustful, lustful nature in terms of feelings, in terms of sexual feelings, in terms of just general other feelings, and this is created within the human beings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala naturally created this and with all other things. Like you see, the test of this dunya is basically this, that Allah has given certain things, innate things created within us. Jealousy is created within us, but we've been commanded not to be jealous. Anger is created within us, but we've been commanded, la taghdab, the hadith says, la taghdab, do not get angry. The sexual desire is created within us, which is used in a halal way in marriage. But there are boundaries and there are rules and regulations. This attraction towards the opposite gender, and now attraction towards the same gender maybe as well. And I've actually got another course after this which I will talk about, that even if someone has an attraction to the same gender, it's not something that basically you have to suppress all of this. So this is natural. Every human being more or less has this attraction, towards the opposite gender, whether it's due to sexuality, feelings, being, acquiring feelings very easily, companionship, neediness towards the opposite gender, and having feelings for the opposite gender. This is very common and it's very easy. And it is one of the weakest instincts of the human being. And shaitan preys on that, P-R-E-Y. Shaitan, Iblis, knows that this is the weakest instinct of the human, regardless of how pious someone is. This is where I can attack the person very easily and make the person slip. And this is why this is natural, but we've got laws, we've got rules set in place. And the only way is willpower. With all the other things, the only way is willpower. And this is why the Quran says, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. Tell the believing men to lower their gaze. Now, despite really wanting to look sexually and lustfully, despite wanting to cast a lustful, sexual, desirous glance at a woman for a man, the Quran says, look down. يَغُضُّ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. You have to just turn away. Look down or look this way or look that way or look whatever, but don't look at her. Despite really wanting to do so. This is a challenge. This is why we are here in this world. And this is the sabr. We always talk about sabr. Sabr is not only when we have a calamity and a problem, or someone passes away, or illness and sickness, or some, affliction, and we have to do sabr and patience. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. It's not just that. Sabr is even when we want to commit sin, and for the sake of Allah, we suppress our nafs and our desire. We control. So the whole life is a test like this. This is why the hadith says, حُجِبَتِ النَّارُ بِالشَّهَوَاتِ. Hellfire is veiled with apparently desirable things, the things that we want to do. And Jannah is veiled by apparently difficult things. 5 times a day is difficult, but we have to do them in order to go into Jannah. And the things that takes us to hellfire are things which we feel like them. And we've been put in this world, and we've got a willpower, and here's the test. هَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ. You take this choice or you take this choice. Anything in life, we have to have willpower. We have to do something to get anywhere in the world. People wake up 4 a.m. to go to the gym. People go on proper low carb or no carb or hard kind of keto diets. Why? If it was something, it's not that they don't like the food. They like the cake and they like the biscuits and they like the chocolates and they like the pastries and they like the chips and they like the burgers and the kebabs and salt and spice and pepper and everything. They're doing it for a reason. In order to get something, sabr, willpower, patience. They're avoiding all the desirable foods, tasty, sweet food. But they do it. Where there's a willpower, there's a way, there's a willpower. And anything in the world is achievable. And this is the whole Islamic perspective. That look, you will have these desires, you will have all of this. Here's the test. Do you have the willpower? Do you submit? This is the fundamental reason that we've been sent into this world. And this is why the Quran says, just two verses and then I'll get to the point. Allah says, أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ وَلَمَّا يَعْلَمِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا. Do you think you will enter paradise and Allah has not tested you, Allah has not seen from you yet, meaning you haven't gone through yet mujahada, that struggle yet? It's not going to be just easy like, and that's it, going to Jannah. And Allah has not tested you for sabr yet. وَيَعْلَمَ الصَّابِرِينَ. And another really important verse, Allah says, وَجَزَاهُمْ بِمَا صَبَرُوا جَنَّةً وَحَرِيرًا. SubhanAllah. The reward for the whole life of sabr is paradise. The pleasure of Allah and paradise and bliss in the hereafter, that reward, the Quran is saying, is for one thing, which is sabr. This whole life, as soon as you come into this world until you die, it's all just sabr, patience about everything. From the moment you wake up till the moment you sleep, sabr, patience. Waking up for Fajr Salah, patience. Going to the work, patience. You don't want to, every part of life, there are things we don't really feel like doing them. They're difficult. Someone wants to commit zina, he feels like doing it, sabr. For the sake of Allah, I won't do it. I need to fast in Ramadan. I feel hungry, thirsty. You don't really want to fast. It's a struggle. But for the sake of Allah, I will fast. I don't really want to go for Hajj, but for the sake of Allah, I don't want to give in charity. Like, it's difficult to take money out and give to the poor and needy. But you put a knife on your heart and you give it. Just like the way we do that, if there's a desire to chat with the opposite gender or flirt or look or, start some sort of relationship, then this is the same approach. You take a knife and you put it on your heart, basically, not literally, but you basically just know, whatever happens, I'm not going to do it. Whatever happens. In the beginning, it'll be difficult, but you will get used to it. Like the people who diet, go on a diet and have they're on a special diet or whatever. I've been on one for good 2-3 years. In the beginning, it was difficult. Now, like there's a biscuit there. I haven't touched a biscuit for 2 years now. There's a biscuit there. There's a cake there. It looks so good. Sometimes after I started, like I might just take a bit nibble and I said, oh no, that's it. Just one. Let me just taste one. A few times what happened was I was taking a bit and I chewed it and then I threw it like in the bin. I said, I'm not going to swallow it. So it was very difficult in the beginning, but now you could bring the best cake in front of me. I have no desire to eat it. This is what happens with sins as well. In the beginning, first 4, 5, 6 months, you have to fight. You might fall down. You might commit a mistake here. You might commit a mistake there. Then back on track, back mistake, back track. But then after that, we will create this ability to control our nafs. We will know the boundaries. So this is the lustful soul that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, and these things are there. And Allah says, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا. Do not even come close to zina. The verse of the Quran in Surah Al-Mu'minun, Allah says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ. Successful are the believers, and then Allah mentions a few things about them, and then those who protect their private parts, except on their spouses. Whoever seeks beyond that, they are transgressors. And based on that verse, anything, this فَمَنِ ابْتَغَى وَرَاءَ ذَلِكَ, beyond halal marriage, anything beyond that, outside of that, that leads to unlawful relationship between men and women, is prohibited in Sharia. So now, in terms of this gender boundaries, especially at the workplace, etc., and social media, and digitally, and in professional spaces. Going back to what I said, these guidelines have been given for a respectful barrier. They have been given to both men as well as women. Okay. Now, just quickly, I'm just going to bring this up here. Sorry, not that. Sorry about that. I'll do it again. This is just a couple of things. Yeah, I think as it come up. Like we said here, that one of the main reasons, or the main reason, is protection from adultery and fornication, zina, etc. The objectives behind the laws of gender interaction, and one of the this is these are they're all kind of related. It's protecting adultery, fornication, and it's preservation of the lineage, preservation of the family system and the home, and maintaining peaceful, happy, and harmonious relationships amongst people. These four, they're all kind of connected. So this is what I said. These laws are there in order for a respectful separation between the two genders, rules relating to both men, guidelines given to both men and women. And this is actually what the word hijab means. A lot of times a lot of people don't know this. We say the word hijab. Hijab means a barrier. Hijab actually means just a barrier. Now, we normally talk about headscarf as the hijab. That's not really what hijab is. We can say it's part of the hijab, but it's metaphorically, it's in a common usage where you say sisters who wear the hijab, but that's not what the real meaning of hijab is. Hijab literally means a barrier. And the proper meaning of hijab is this, what I just said. Hijab refers to a set of laws. Set. Not one law, not one rule. Hijab relates to a set of laws, guidelines, commandments, injunctions, laws, rulings, principles. A set of them, like a set. Given to both men and women, not just women, both men and women, for a respectful separation between the two genders. And then I added this: in order to save and protect people from adultery, in order to preserve lineage, in order to preserve the family system and the home, and maintain peaceful, happy, harmonious relationships amongst people. And when people don't follow these guidelines, we see today what's happening in the wider society, Muslims, non-Muslims included. What's happened? There's anarchy, marriages don't last anymore, relationships don't last anymore, children are fatherless and motherless. Like it's weird, it's become so crazy. I did some research on this. Like majority of the people in the Western, countries, Western countries, you'll see it's like animal behavior now. Majority, so many. I know in the UK it's like this, and I'm sure the same in North America, etc. I don't know what percentage of women are single mothers. They are single mothers. They can't stay with a man because the man cheating and she cheats. There are so many single mothers. Like you will. I did some research on this. Within non-Muslims, you'll see many of them. How many kids are like? I've got 5 kids. The first 2 is from the first guy. The second one is from another guy, just saw for like a couple of months, and then he just left me. And the next one is for a one night stand I had somewhere else. And the fifth one is from here. Like I've got 5 from. I remember once I was reading somewhere, there was a woman who said, I've got 5 kids from 5 different men. And she's still running around here and there to different men. 5 different kids from 5 different men. That's what animals do. You'll get a female animal, like any man comes, like any male animal, just has sexual intercourse and gone, finished. Then the job and gone. I don't know who the father is. Fatherless and lineage is mixed up. We don't know who's the father. Within human beings, this begins with, it doesn't happen just like that. I mean, sometimes, like some of the wider society is crazy. Like they just drink and that's it. It doesn't even, there's no even start. Like they just go on a night out and just sleep with it, whatever, and whatever. But people who don't do that and live a bit more kind of a good life, relatively, then this starts, this is where Muslims come in, even so-called practicing Muslims, this starts with small things. Shaitan is very clever. He's doing his job behind the scenes, and we don't even realize. Slowly, gradually, it might be just some innocent messages. It might be just based on Islamic things. It might just be some Islamic things, and it destroys family life. It destroys marriages. It destroys the tarbiyah of the children. This is why if the parents are doing these kind of things, we'll see children. They're not They don't have the proper Islamic tarbiyah, and then they go off track. They go into drugs, and all of this is all related. They don't have the love and care and attention that they deserve. Then they go into wrong hands and wrong company and evil company. They go into drug abuse, and this is where then homosexuality and a lot of these things come up. Sometimes parents complain, "Oh, my children, they've gone here and they've gone there." It's like if the parents don't have that bond and link, then that's going to happen to the children. So it starts slowly. The man is working somewhere else, the woman is working somewhere else, the wife is somewhere else, the husband is somewhere else. The whole day he's with all these other men and women, and she's with all these other men and women. She dresses up for the workplace. She looks better outside than she looks at home. And he's like putting all his perfume and fragrances and spending Monday to Friday or Monday to Saturday, 5 days a week or 6 days a week, morning till evening with other people. And there's, relationships are being initiated, and they take numbers of each other, and then it's just very innocent, work related, WhatsApp, just here and there, and then just next time it might just be a smiley emoji, and then just maybe like 2 X's maybe, and then it goes a bit more, and then one pushes something, another one pushes something else, and it's like, okay, and then you're asking how your day was, and okay, and then there's feelings, especially with sisters. They very easily develop feelings, very easily develop feelings, and very easy to fall into fornication, zina, relationships, and then it affects the family life. So this is the whole reason. And I'll tell you one thing, it never lasts as well, because it's lust. It never lasts. It never lasts, because real marital halal relationship has that barakah, blessings, when you share a home, and you share a family, you share children, and you have responsibility. It's not easy, it's difficult, and you're doing it for the sake of Allah. A lot of these things, it doesn't last. There'll be a relationship for 2-3 years here, and then it peters out, and they've got bored of each other, and then afterwards someone else, and then someone else, and it's just, there's no peace, there's no contentment in life, there's no harmony, there's no good relationships. People get depressed because of it. There's anxiety, there's stress, there's like, he's not giving me, the attention, and she's looking for attention there, and she's looking for attention here. So many people want attention nowadays. Build a connection with Allah. You won't need attention from human beings. We are a very attention-seeking society. That's another issue as well. So these are guidelines, rules given, right, for both men and women, for a respectful separation in terms of, this saving. This is the main objective, the hikmah, the wisdom. This is the hikmah and wisdom. Now, in terms of these guidelines, just quickly, one major thing which is prohibited is khalwa. Now remember, these guidelines, there are a set of laws, like I said, set of laws. One of the main one, if we list, in this particular slides, I've listed like 6-7 very important guidelines. The most important one, and that's what I'm going to talk about mainly, is the prohibition of khalwa. Khalwa. Prohibition of khalwa, which is being alone with a non-mahram of opposite sex in a room, place where a third person is not able to easily enter upon them, which is not usually accessible to others. This is categorically forbidden. There's hadiths there. There's no time for it, but like we've already like gone nearly 2/3 of the session. بل لا يخلون رجل بامرأة إلا كان ثالثهما شيطان. A man should not be alone with a woman except the third amongst them is shaitan. A man does not, that's this hadith of Tirmidhi, etc. But there's numerous narrations about the prohibition of khalwa. Now, what is khalwa? Khalwa is basically, there's some things here written, but basically khalwa is where a man and a woman, I'll just give you a summary. A man and a woman are alone in a room, in a place where a third person is not able to easily enter upon them, or they're not under the view of other people. Now, a lot of people ask about this. Look, in the workplace or in professional setups or wherever we are, if a man and a woman are working in a place, the room in seclusion, room is locked, of course, that's haram. There is no way. Look for an alternative job. You can't do, there's no barakah in that money and income that you're going to get. It's haram, sinful, end of story, khalas. Like, even if you don't think that you're going to be attracted, because rules are not based on what we feel. Rules are made for everybody, regardless of the scenario setup. It's not, you see, this is another principle of Sharia, that it's not left to the judgment of people that, okay, you decide in this case. Rules are generally made. Like, for example, wudu breaks with sleep, but the main reason is because of passing wind. But Allah never left it to individuals that you sleep and you decide afterwards when you wake up, did you pass wind or not? No. Just sleep itself was made because it's very difficult to judge and decide, especially about your own self. So these rules are not there. Okay, do you think that you'll feel attraction towards it? Do you think there might be a sinful thing between, you and that woman or you and that man? No. As long as you're there, regardless of the scenario, the room is locked, closed, haram, end of story, khalas, and that is not permissible whatsoever. Now, there are other kind of situations. So you're working like in a professional setup, you're a doctor, etc., and you've got a patient. But again, we've talked about this in the medical, courses with Balagh, that if a third person is not there, you need to try to avoid it. But if it's absolutely necessary, legally, etc., then you have to make sure that the door is not locked or closed, and somebody can easily enter. And then you have to, have this self kind of protection. Like a room with a window with people walking in the corridors and they can see inside. That is also okay. Because if you have a third person, or if a third person's there, or if a view in kind of room, that's also okay. Because it's not seclusion. It's not khalwa. The scholars have talked about a man and a woman being in a car by themselves, in a taxi. So for a female, for example, to take a male taxi, or a male to take a female private taxi, and taking a taxi and being alone. Now, they say that if you are within like streets in urban areas, within town central, like these streets, and the windows are not blacked out, and people can see, etc., then that's technically permissible. But if you're going to be driving or traveling on the outskirts or somewhere far, etc., then that's not allowed as well. So now, another thing, a lot of people ask that, look, what about if I'm having a work meeting at a restaurant or somewhere? I always say this, look, if the people around you are absolute strangers, imagine you're meeting a woman, a man is meeting a woman on the Spanish coast of Costa del Sol in a restaurant. And you've got all these other people there, they have no clue who you are, and you have no clue who they are. That is also khalwa, because there's no kind of protection barrier. Even though people are around you, you are alone in your own space. These people, they have no clue who you are. So you need people who kind of know you. At the workplace, anyone can come and, enter the room, the door is open slightly or not locked. Anyone can just come in. There's other work colleagues, etc. So that prevents a person. So therefore, this khalwa is the major prohibition. Also, moving on quickly, a lot of the times people ask that, look, talking, conversing with the opposite gender in itself is not haram. And this is why the verse of the Quran, Allah said to the wives of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that when you have to converse with non-mahram men, فَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ فَيَطْمَعَ الَّذِي فِي قَلْبِهِ مَرَضٌ وَقُلْنَ قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا. Do not be soft in your speech. Do not be very gentle in your conversation. And this is why the rule basically is that Islam does allow, because we live in this world, we have to talk sometimes to the opposite gender. We can't just avoid that completely. Otherwise, you can't live in this world. Whether the talking is one in person or whether it's over the phone, sometimes you call a office or some company and there'll be a female picking the phone up. And that's so good. The calls are recorded. This is, in many of these Western countries, all these professional companies, when you dial and you have all these different options, press one. If you're looking, you call your bank. If you want to look at your, whatever your accounts, press one. If this, press two. If this, press three. And please remember, calls are recorded for what purposes? For professional, I don't know what purposes. Calls are recorded. The person on the other line, they know it's being recorded. You know it's being recorded. And that recording it's a guard for a lot of people. People won't say things out of line because we know it's being recorded. So I was saying that in professional settings, what was I saying? Yeah, we were saying that when you have to talk to people, you call and you have to talk. When you talk, the Quranic law is that do not be, there's two rules. One is do not talk, the content, two rules, the content and the manner, both have to be Islamically legitimate. Content meaning what we talk about. The conversation, the thing that we talk about must be something that is required and needed. That should be appropriate. The content should not be inappropriate. The thing that you're talking about. So you can't really talk about, how was your sleep? Did you enjoy your sleep? Was your pillow very nice and soft? How's your, is your bed soft? How's your quilt? Did you get a good night's sleep? Oh yeah, and that's not what you can't talk about those kind of things. If you're talking to somebody professionally, you can't talk about those kind of things. The content, the thing that you're talking about is not right. Number two, even if the thing that or the content is right, you're talking about something important, something related to work, the manner, the method, the way has to also be appropriate. It can't be like very, very sweetie. It can't be very, this is what the Quran says, فَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ. Don't be gentle in the way you speak. Do not put an accent on. Sometimes like people, they speak to a non-mahram straight away. They start speaking better. Some people have this habit. Like you're talking to your own family, you're talking to your husband or your wife, and it's like you just talk however. As soon as the phone comes on, straight away, the whole tone and everything changes. The female companions, when this verse was revealed, they would specifically make a point of making sure that their voice was not attractive. Some of them, when Allah addressed them and He said, فَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ, do not be soft in your speech, they used to deliberately try to roughen up their voice when they had to talk to men. You don't have to be rude. Look, the barrier is you don't have to be rude. You don't have to say, like a man talks to you as a woman, what is it? You don't have to do all of that, yeah? Be rude. Just no smileys, no too many like and all of that kind. Just keep it very, very formal. So we have to be very careful. This khalwa also, if you're emailing, look, technically speaking, just sending an email is permissible as long as these two conditions are met. Technically speaking, a message is permissible when these two conditions are met, manner and the content. Technically, we can't say that, look, sending a message over the phone is haram. It's not khalwa. However, given these times, it is highly, highly recommended that people who work together and they're going to have regular contact, especially those who are going to have a regular contact, then you should do so in the presence of others. Like, if you have a WhatsApp group, then just have men, women together. Everyone sees one-to-one messaging. If you're going to have regular contact, avoid that. Because, as I said, shaitan is very sharp, very clever, very intelligent. Whatever professional setup is, whatever. Look at even in Islamic matters, um, even Islamic. You know, some of the worst cases take place when people, because Quran uses Islam. You know, when we're like, we've got organizations, scholars, students, very easy, because we're thinking this is all relating to Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Deen, etc. And you know, and this is where Shaitan attacks. I had one teacher passed away, rahimahullah, Sheikh Mufti Mahmoud al-Uthmani, rahimahullah, passed away 2 years ago. Amazing, 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 amazing Sheikh. Amazing Sheikh of Karachi, Pakistan. Sheikh Mufti Mahmoud al-Uthmani, may Allah have mercy on him. He was a man of balance. I've got a YouTube video somewhere where I've talked about him when he's passed away. So now, if you're a sheikh, and he's a sheikh of tasawwuf and tazkiyah, lots of female students are trying to refer to him and talk to him and seek guidance, etc. So he wrote a guideline, sent it generally, and this is, the title is "For Religious Purposes, Connection with Female." And then he just briefly, just a couple of minutes on this. He said, look, sisters, many of them are very righteous. They have really nice, objectives, and, good, basically, they want good for themselves, for their family, and they are pious, practicing. And this is why they refer to scholars and ulama and shuyukh, and whether it's a phone call, whether they write letters, and because they want goodness in their life. They want to practice upon deen, and this is really amazing from a lot of the females, that they have this Islamic religiosity in them, that they're not going to non-Muslims, or they're not going to non-practicing people. They're connecting themselves to deen and the people of deen. But these females, they're very clean-hearted. And this is the point he said. They only refer because they love Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what happens, that some of the men, they have these bad thoughts, even the religious people, and shaitan and nafs comes, and slowly, it makes both of them lead towards sin. And females, they have this love. They love very easily as well, and they hate very easily as well. And then he says here that very possible that they will get involved in sins, and therefore it's very difficult to discover where the love for Allah and His Messenger and the love for deen has now transformed into love for this person, feelings for this person of deen. And some of them are married, and it causes problems in their family. And this is why many of our mashayikh, they would never have a direct contact with non-mahram women. They were very particular, very precautious. And he says, this is why myself, Sheikh Mufti Mahmoud al-Uthmani, my habit has been, because I work in Darul Ifta, and a lot of people contact me. I don't have trust on my own self. He's saying that about himself. And therefore, I never receive direct. If anyone, he had this rule, if any female wants to write to me, she has to write the letter, has to be shown to her husband if she's married, if not her father or her brother or a mahram, and he needs to write underneath the letter, I have read this letter and this is my sign. Only then I will open that letter and I will respond to it. And when I respond to the letter, I will respond on the name of the mahram or the husband, and it will be addressed to him. He will open it. He will, then hand it over to the female. So basically, it's quite long. He wrote a long piece on this. So this is why it's very, very important. So just quickly finishing, khalwa, we have to be very careful. These rules, the main thing is khalwa. Okay? Which we need to avoid. And then some other rules which you all know about anyway. Like I said, set of rules for both men and women. Just quickly in 2 minutes, finishing this off. Set of laws. Khalwa is the main prohibition, and then covering the awrah. So set of laws. Number 2 rule is covering the nakedness of the body, both men and women. So women have to cover the entire body. Awrah is except the face and the hands and the feet. The entire body has to be covered in loose clothing and non-see-through clothing. And the man has to also cover, he's got awrah. His awrah is from the navel to the knees included. Again, loose clothing, not tight jeans, loose clothing and non-see-through. And the rest should also be covered, but it's not awrah. So that's the second one. And then I already talked about this. The third rule is prohibition of informal interaction. Like I said, the content and the manner both have to be appropriate. And a fourth one, prohibition of wearing perfume. This is specifically for women only. There's a hadith, if a woman wears perfume and passes by a group of non-mahram men and it's by her perfume, she is such and such, the Messenger ﷺ used stern words for her. So if a woman is going in the presence of men and going to be there, then don't shower yourself with Christian Dior and all, perfume, and that's it. That's haram. Within women, it's okay. This is mainly for women, but also we can say that if a man is going to be in the midst of women as well, don't apply a really high level of perfume. And lowering the gaze for both men and women. These are the set of laws. And then the last one is the niqab, and that's like a discussion, and there's a difference of opinion on that. Okay, so we'll just leave it to that. Now, finally, just one bit I want to just say that a lot of people ask about mixed gatherings. I mean, I don't have time to talk about it, but mixed gatherings. These are the set of laws. Mixed gatherings where in one place there's lots of men, lots of women. Like, for example, you are traveling in a plane. There's women sitting on that seat, there's men sitting on this seat. Is that halal? Yeah, you can travel on a plane. You can travel on a train. You can be at a restaurant. It's okay. But again, all these rules, you need to be dressed modestly and you can't have an informal interaction. All these rules will apply. Now, people ask about Islamic settings that you have an Islamic, kind of gathering. Like you have weddings. Again, if it's going to be weddings where men and women are mixing and talking and flirting and they're not dressed modestly and men are looking at women and women are looking at men and and people got have hair open, some of the women, and some people are not dressed modestly, then of course that's haram. That's absolutely haram. But I'm talking about a gathering where it's just because Islam doesn't say you have to have certain meters social distancing from the opposite gender. That rule is not there. As long as there's no khalwa, you can't be close, but so if, for example, you're sitting in a massive hall and there's women on that side, men on this side, and they're all dressed modestly, they're fulfilling all these rules, and the men are dressed modestly as well, they're fulfilling these rules, and they are not talking amongst themselves, they're not mixing, they're not, chatting and laughing and joking amongst themselves. They're just doing their bit. And they're looking at some screen or something, and lowering the gazes. And if they feel desire, if the female feels desire to a man, then they'll lower the gaze as well. And then they just move on. Technically, in itself, that's not haram. That's okay. It's permissible. Sometimes we become too harsh about that. Sometimes what happens when we need to be strict, we're less strict. We'll say, oh, astaghfirullah, look at this mixed gathering. And then the same person is chatting over WhatsApp with 200 women. In his own private life, because nobody can see that, trying to be very pious about some other issues and trying to act as though, astaghfirullah, this is, and when it comes to that person's personal kind of relationship, and then his messaging, that's more of a khalwa, that's more haram than this. So therefore, we need to really know what's right, what's wrong, and of course, ultimately, willpower, keep on guarding yourself, remembering that we will be answerable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the akhirah for everything that we do. And we'll be questioned about this in the next life. With this, inshallah, I'm going to end just quickly. I know time is really, it's gone up, but just 5 minutes. I think I'll just take a few questions, inshallah. Maybe there aren't too many questions, but just quickly, because, I have to go to another session after this right now. So I am going to not be able to answer so many questions. well as involved in Muslim groups with the sector. I don't know. Shall I just read them, Dr. Salim Tab? I'll just
There's quite a few, but I think the general gist, I think you've covered quite a number of them.
okay.
One question was someone who works online and how do you maintain khalwa in that setting? So they have online sessions, very similar to this. How do they keep that working life balance? Obviously, you mentioned about the setting and the what sort of things for
So this is
online
going to be
sessions.
online, like just one-to-one.
Yeah, it can be one-to-one, or it can be a session where there's a mixed audience, male, female.
Yeah, I mean, of course, mixed audience, that's fine. I mean, that's not khalwa because there's like lots of people. So like this kind of setting is fine because there's lots of people. And like I said, even physically, this would be allowed. If you had sisters on one side, brothers on one side, I mean, I don't personally feel that's haram. I mean, that's as long as these other rules are, acted upon. But yeah, one-to-one, that's going to be problematic. If she's online in one place room and her room is locked and closed, there's nobody else in that room, nobody can easily come into her room, and where you are, nobody can easily come in there, nobody's expected to come in, and then that's khalwa, and that would not really be allowed.
So to sort of manage that, what would be the best way? Just keep the door open. So if you have an office, have the door open, or tell someone I'm in a meeting. You're more than So what sort of things to manage that? So in a general sense, to avoid that khalwa situation.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got the client, then maybe tell them if they can't, if you can't, the person, the professional can't, be with somebody, then tell them to see if they can have someone there in the room, or keep their room door open. Somebody in the house can walk in anytime, they can hear them from afar, etc. So, like for example, if she's a female and she's in a room, then her room door should be fully open, and somebody else in the other room, and somebody can walk in, walk out. So either side, the door should be, it should be that it's expected very easily. There's a 50% chance that somebody could just walk in, or somebody can hear you. Like, not just that the whole, that person is in the building by himself and he knows whatever happens, nobody's ever going to come in here. I am alone. I can keep the door open, everything, but I know nobody's ever going to hear me or listen to me or talk to me or ever come here. That's khalwa. So there has to be some other things in place from either ends. It's not necessarily in both ends, but either end, one end, there has to be a situation where it's open, where someone can walk in easily, 50% chance for them to walk in or listen to the conversation.
Jazakallah, Mufti Sahib. I know your time is precious, as is all of ours, but we have a finite time to finish off on. So I think this opens up a very important aspect that we need to know more or learn more. And alhamdulillah, the fiqh and ethics for working professionals is a course that we're running by Balagh. So I know a 1 hour session isn't enough to really cover all of these issues, but definitely what I would think is that think about signing up for the course. The link is on the chat, so I'd advise even myself, I would probably sign up to the course as well. It's on a Saturday between 2 and 3:30 p.m. And runs for about 16 sessions for about 4 months. So Jazakallah, Mufti Sahib, thank you for your kind advice.
Just one thing. I've just seen this question, and I think I just want to just answer this in 1 minute. Because when we say lower the gaze, now technically speaking, the rule of Islam is lowering the gaze from not looking at the opposite gender section. Shahwa, casting a gaze of shahwa is what's prohibited. That's really what's prohibited. Even though we generally hear just because that's blocking the means. But technically speaking, if someone doesn't have shahwa, technically speaking, it's not haram to look at, not the aura, just the face, the thing which is not aura. So for a man, just to look at the face, not the hair, etc. So technically that's, but so therefore somebody's asked that in a mixed gathering, how does the speaker lower his gaze? So if the speaker is a male, for example, and there's men and women, technically speaking, if he's got no shahwa, it's not haram for him to just quickly look. but still it's better precautious to avoid. So like, for example, I'm a speaker, I go to sometimes events and we've got a barrier in the middle and we have segregations. Females will be on this side. I can't see all the females, but there are some females I can see. I would always just look at the men and look at the men and just, I don't even turn that way. I'm always just looking at the men because I don't trust myself. There's a possibility of shahwa coming on. So therefore, even though it's permissible to look without shahwa, like for example, a female, like a course here, the teachers are teaching, we've got sisters here, they're looking at the screen, they're looking at the lecturers or the speakers. If there's no feelings, then technically it's permissible. But you need to ask some things you just have to ask your own self. Istafti qalbak. And if you feel that, look, I might get a feeling or develop a feeling or I might feel some sort of attraction, then don't look at the actual person who's speaking. Just listen to them and look at the slides, etc., or look down or write, whatever, inshallah.
Okay, Jazakallah Mufti Sahab, and once again, thank you for your time, and alhamdulillah, very enlightening as well, clarified a lot of the very important issues regarding social gender interactions, and inshallah, hopefully we'll see you again. Jazakallah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I think we'll finish the session there. We've gone over time, so forgive us for going over time, but also wasn't able to answer all the questions, but inshallah, like I mentioned, the fiqh and ethics for working professionals is a course that will be run. I think it starts on the 6th or the 8th of October. More than welcome to join that. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.